10% of all the new cars sold in Iowa come from the Karl Auto Group. Our neighbors trust us to have the largest selection and the highest standards. To our current customers, thank you. And to our future customers, see for yourself why Karl drives Iowa.
Your dealer for life, it's the Karl way. Keen Project Solutions, a modern engineering and construction firm, embracing technology, establishing industry-leading systems and processes, and delivering reliable results to our customers. At Keen, we are passionate about inspiring our team and our customers to achieve great things, offering the highest quality services in commercial construction to deliver turnkey projects. Our core beliefs drive us forward. Protect people, build relationships, drive innovation, and focus on end goals, bringing our customers' desired results to life. See how Keen can work for you at ThinkDifferent.ThinkKeen.com.
Experience the world's largest sports book at your fingertips.
I'm Derek Stevens. I'm a lifelong sports bettor and owner of Circus Sports. We built this platform for bettors that want high limits and total transparency.
Featuring high limits, player-friendly pricing, and exceptional live customer service when you need it.
Hi, how may I help you today?
Download your new bookie today and start betting like a pro.
Circus Sports.
Well, welcome to Cyclone Fanatic postgame here in the Northwest Bank Studios. Iowa State loses to TCU 62-55 on the road. We're going to break all of it down. I'm Jake Brend, joined by Jackson Pence. Rough game, and we're grateful that Karl Auto Group sponsors all postgame coverage. Not just after the fun wins, they bring it to us after the tough losses. Thanks to Karl Auto Group, Karl Chevrolet, for presenting all of our pre- and postgame coverage all season long. Well, should we hit the panic button? Should we hit the properly react button? Should we hit the overreact button? Or somewhere in between, Pence?
I think you can hit a button of all of those. I mean, I'm certainly not panicked. This team is still really good, and one game's not going to change how I think about this team. But obviously there's some glaring issues that have not just been happening tonight, but the past, 8 or 9 games. I mean, the turnovers is just the number one thing that I'm looking at. Is you turn the ball over 17 times tonight to a TCU team. That's good. It's a pretty good defensive team, but there's no way that you should be having that many turnovers against that team, and you're one off of your season high in turnovers, and especially down the stretch. And I know we talked about it, but this team is at its best when it's sharing the basketball and when the ball is flowing around the perimeter or into the inside. And at times, like Iowa State just don't do that. And I know they had 20 assists on 24 made field goals tonight, and that's really good. And that's what we talked about pregame. That's what we wanted them to do. There's just times in the game, especially when you're not hitting from the perimeter, that you have to move the ball consistently. And there's times where they did it great and times they did not.
Yeah, this is a game that I'm sure it's going to bring all sorts of takes, and I would implore everyone, take a deep breath before you type, take a deep breath before you think, because that was a horrible performance. It's what it is. I've seen a couple comments that say, you've played down to subpar competition all year long. Well, that's just not true. Iowa State had won their last 4 games, and they were all subpar teams that they beat pretty handily before Baylor. What Iowa State did in that game was they played down to the level of competition. They got up, and they let TCU back in the game with turnovers. They let TCU back in this game by having no ball movement. Iowa State, their first 13 field goals were assisted, all 13 of them. That stat shows me you're moving the ball, you're moving without the ball, you're getting your team good looks. Yes, Iowa State missed a few they'd like to have back in that first half, but for the most part, I thought the first half effort was fine in that first half. The second half, Iowa State got down big, real big. A lot of that comes down to turnovers. A few of it was some offensive rebounding. Some of it was, pure bad luck in my eyes. But when they were down 8, how did Iowa State get back in this game? They're moving the ball. They were moving without the ball. They were creating turnovers. And then they built a lead, and then they went right away from that. And that is the difference to me. Iowa State was up with 90 seconds left in this game. And really at that point, you probably just needed one basket, two baskets to put it away. And Iowa State reverted back to iso ball. They had a couple turnovers. And that ended up being the difference that gave TCU life when this game was so close to being over. And that's the concern to me, is that Iowa State did not close this game out when they had the chance.
And we've seen them do it multiple times, especially the last couple of years. Is Iowa State's been so good, especially when it's in the crunch time. They know what it takes to get to win the game, and this year they haven't really had to do that a whole lot. They haven't had a whole lot of close games. I know the Iowa game they did it down the stretch, but they've been beating all these teams by 30 plus or in the high teens. But with the stretch coming up that they have, this might be good for them just to learn. Hey, if we can't play well against TCU, we're not going to beat good teams like Kansas and Houston that are coming into our place on Saturday and Monday. So, I think Iowa State's going to be fine. I'm not worried that they're just all of a sudden a bad team, because we've seen, after those 2 losses in a row to Kansas and Cincinnati, how they responded against UCF and on the 3 games after that. So I'm not hitting the panic button, but there are some glaring issues that need to be fixed. And I think one of the things that you can help with reduce the turnovers, especially when you're playing TCU tonight, is they play a very similar style of defense that Iowa State does. What's the one way that you can beat Iowa State's defense is get the ball in the middle. And when Iowa State was at their best tonight, when they had Jefferson in the middle of the paint, when they overload one third of the side of the court, you get Jefferson in the middle, he can play off that. He can drive to the rim or kick to the corner or find the cutter on the backside. That's what Iowa State needed to do more often, and I'm kind of shocked that they didn't do that. But there's just so many and even I see people talking about the free throws. That's a big deal too. But there's just some things that Iowa State needs to figure out, and I think they're going to. Like I said, I'm not really too worried about it. They just have stuff they need to clean up.
Yeah, and we called this a trap game all week, especially when you watch what Kansas did last night. It is a massive stretch ahead, and that's all we've been talking about. It's still not an excuse. Despite it being a trap game, Iowa State knows what's at stake. Iowa State knows that with a win tonight, they would have still been in contention for a 1 seed. They know that, with the win tonight, they're still in contention for the Big 12 tournament, or for the Big 12 championship. That's, for the most part, gone now. You have to take a deep breath and realize, oh yeah, there's a lot of basketball to be played. Iowa State's not the only good team that's losing. Illinois just lost at home to Wisconsin, a team that this TCU team blew out. So, you've got to put it all into perspective, but it's really disappointing, especially with how this game went. You play a D to D plus and end up taking the lead as late as you do and give it away. That's frustrating. And I think my hypothesis before rewatching the game back. So Iowa State's bigs tonight, specifically Buchanan, Plata, and Mulder in his short stint, did not have a good night. They had so many possessions where they should have gone up, not hesitated, not pump fake, just dunk the ball or lay it in, and they couldn't do it. That was the biggest thing to me. And when did Iowa State make their run? They went small ball. What has TJ Altenberger told us since the summer? Well, he doesn't want to overuse the 5 ball or the small ball because of how tiring it is for Joshua Jefferson to play the small ball 5. This is not an excuse for Jefferson. It's just a reality. If Jefferson's playing the 5 for an extended period of time, it's going to be very taxing on him. And I think what we saw at the end of that game was Jefferson, for some reason, trying an iso ball possession. I give part of the blame to him for that. I give part of the blame to the other guys for not moving without the ball, not cutting, because that's what Jefferson was doing all night. He got Iowa State back in this game by finding guys in the backdoor cut, by feeding his teammates. And at the end of this, I think you saw fatigue play a factor. I think it was probably, I think you saw it more on the offensive end than the defensive end, which you wouldn't normally expect. And that's got to be better. Iowa State's not going to be a good half-court offense unless they move without the ball. And we saw that in full force tonight, and it's very disappointing to see that ended up being the result.
Joshua Jefferson's, he's a bona fide All-American, and you saw today he's number 2 in, Player of the Year rankings. The guy played 38 minutes tonight. Obviously, he's an All-American, but 38 minutes for a guy that's coming down to the stretch that Iowa State is—that's a lot of minutes for a guy like that. And you'd like to have Mulder when his short stint was in there. I thought Plata played really well at times tonight. Buchanan had a good start to the second half. Those guys haven't really figured it out totally yet, and they have shown times this year that they know how to play Big 12 basketball. I think sometimes they just lose that, and especially when you're playing a team like TCU who is undersized but really physical and really scrappy. Sometimes I think they can lose sight of just going up and dunking it instead of trying to lay it in.
We'll keep breaking down the game. I'd like to thank Natuzel Financial Services of Raymond James for bringing us post-game shows this basketball season. Clay Natuzel and his sons Chase and Cody bring over 32 years of experience in the financial industry. They're lifelong Cyclone fans and supporters, and I promise you that they are sulking and they are disappointed just like you. Those are the types of Cyclone fans that you're getting, and that's the type of service you're getting with the Natuzels. If you'd like to connect them, search them. Natuzel Financial Services of Raymond James. That is spelled Netusil. We truly appreciate their support, and we could not do it without them. Also like to thank Keen Project Solutions. Offices in Ankeny and Kansas City. They're hiring project managers and engineers for their Ankeny and Kansas City offices. Join a team that values your dedication, fuels your growth, and turns your expertise into impactful solutions. Visit thinkdifferentthinkkeen.com to apply. And it's probably an appropriate time to give out our pest of the game. I think there's probably a lot of worthy nominees. I'm going to go with free throw shooting. 2 of 8. You miss the front end of a 1-on-1 in crunch time. I just had a bad feeling early in the second half when Killian Torre and Taman Lipsy both missed 2 free throws. It was back-to-back possessions, 4 missed free throws in total. And I tweeted out that I have a feeling free throw shooting is going to cost this team a game eventually, and ultimately it played a massive part tonight. I don't think it was the ultimate reason. Iowa State didn't really shoot a free throw for the better part of the second half. Like, this was... They didn't miss free throws when they had the lead. I'll put it that way. They missed free throws when they were trying to get back in this game, but the free throw shooting's got to be better, and it's got to be better from your guards. It's got to be better from everyone else.
And I think sometimes you get so far into the season, you are who you are. The team's shooting 68% from the line this year, which I would say probably is in the lower half of the Big 12, especially for a team that gets to the free throw line as much as Iowa State does. So, I mean, they've got to be better at it, and they know that. So, it's one of those deals where you keep practicing it and you hope it gets better as they keep playing. But I think when you get so far into the season, you are who you are, and 68% is what they're at for the season, so you just kind of have to live with that as you go on.
Yeah, and this happens in college basketball. We've been saying for weeks now that despite being the number 3 3-point shooting team in America, there's going to be games where the shots don't fall. And there's been games this season where shots didn't fall, and Iowa State still found ways. How did they do that? Well, they did it by not turning the ball over. They did it by making their shots in the paint. They did it by making free throws, by creating turnovers, and really, Iowa State did none of that tonight. They turned the ball over too much. They left so many points at the rim that were, easy. There's a lot of times where you miss some layups where you're like, oh, that was contested. There were 3 or 4 that come to mind that were easy layups that were missed, and that's what comes down to this loss. That's what it all comes down to, and that's what's... Let's put the silver lining glasses on. If there is a silver lining, it's that this is the first time all year that Iowa State didn't shoot the ball well and didn't find a way to pull it out. Like, they shot the ball okay at Kansas. They shot the ball really well at Cincinnati. It was the other stuff that they weren't doing well. Tonight was the first time that they weren't able to overcome that 3-point shooting, and I still trust that this team, what they've shown me over a 25-game sample size, that more often than not, they're either, 1, going to make threes, or 2, they're going to find other ways to win. And let's hope, as this big stretch comes up, that tonight was the outlier.
Yeah, and what are the key stats for Iowa State to when they're playing well and when they're winning big games? What are the key stats? It's points off turnovers, it's fast break points, and it's second chance points. Iowa State 17 points or 17 turnovers led to 19 TCU points. Iowa State forced 15 TCU turnovers, only scored 14. When you're losing that battle, especially when that's your number one goal on defense, it's already going to make it hard for Iowa State to win. And then fast break, Iowa State scored 15 for TCU. So there's two glaring stats. When Iowa State's successful, those are in the high teens. So, I mean, it's just one game, and like we said, it could flip just like that. And I think we've seen a trend, that they've played like that sometimes and sometimes not. And the defense is really good. It's number 6 in KenPom. We know that Iowa State has a good defense, and sometimes it's teams. I mean, the ball bounces the wrong way. I thought Iowa State hustled really hard at times tonight, and sometimes it just doesn't go your way. And I mean, TCU wanted to win that game. They were really desperate, and sometimes Iowa State really hasn't played as desperate as they want to. And you could tell that TCU was really desperate and needed to win that game, much like Kansas and Cincinnati were a couple months ago.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Iowa State played horrible. That ended up being the difference. I thought the defense was fine. When you're in the moment, you can have certain possessions where you're you're frustrated with the defense, but at the end of the day, you give up 62 points, and 19 of those, like you said, came off of turnovers. That's your offense giving their offense points. Tonight was an offensive issue, an offensive ball movement issue, and that's what it comes down to me. Someone in the comment asking why we're not pointing out the negatives. The negative, the weakness, is not moving the freaking ball. That's what it comes down to. You can blame one player, you can blame a coach. At the end of the day, it's not one player. It's not one coach. TJ Altenberger is the best coach in school history. What he's done this year with this team, what he's done in 5 years, is incredible. If you don't want to trust that, that's a you problem. I promise you'll be on the wrong side of history. I promise you'll be on the wrong side of history. And TJ Altenberger, who's a very smart basketball mind and one of the best coaches in America, would tell you right now with a straight face, and swear on his mother's grave, that tonight was not Joshua Jefferson's fault. He would tell you that Joshua Jefferson didn't play great, and he had problems, and he had a few turnovers, but he'd also tell you that it's on his teammates to find ways to make offense when teams are collapsing on Jefferson. This is a team problem. This is an Iowa State problem from top to bottom, and they're going to go into the lab on Wednesday. They're going to go into the lab on Thursday and Friday and work this out as they've got a big stretch coming up. And if you don't believe that TJ Altenberger isn't going to do that and that he's not going to coach this team and he's not going to address the mistakes, then don't bother showing up to Hilton Coliseum, because that is disingenuous, and you got to take a look in the mirror. Sorry.
I mean, the Iowa State, the way they are successful as a team is playing team basketball. They don't have a bunch of first-round picks that can just go out there and play one-on-one basketball. The reason they are so successful, and when you look back at TJ's tenure at Iowa State, is those first couple of teams were not very good on offense. They were really, really bad, but they were successful because they moved the ball and that they were able to get good shots as a team. And team basketball is what Otzelberger wants to play, and that's how Iowa State that's how Iowa State's been good under TJ, and that's how they're going to continue to be good, because they don't have a guy like AJ DeBanza who can just make any shot on the floor, or Darren Peterson who can just go out there and hit any shot on the floor. That's not the kind of people they have on the team. And I think it's better for Iowa State, because then you have many more options. You have a Milan Momcilovic who can go off at any time. You have Joshua Jefferson. You have Taman Lipsey. Nate Heisey can hit shots too. I mean, obviously it didn't all click tonight, but we've seen it at times. Iowa State beat Kansas State by 30-plus on the road this year. They beat Purdue by 30-plus in Purdue this year. They know how to play these types of games, and one game's not going to change how I feel about this team.
Yeah, and you can't do that in basketball. You can do it in football. There's too many basketball games to be played to declare Tuesday night issues as complete season issues. I think every problem we saw tonight has been something that's spilled throughout this season at some point. And a lot of that, to me, comes down to ball movement and not creating turnovers. I think we've called that out quite a bit this year. I think TJ Altenberger's been pretty brutally honest about that. when they got blown out at Kansas, when they got blown out at Cincinnati, that those were the problems. I'm sure when we talk to him on Thursday and what he says tonight after the game, I'm sure we'll echo that. And those are the things that Iowa State's got to focus on, because you've got massive games coming up against Kansas, and that's the good news when you play in the Big 12. Games like this at TCU are a lot tougher than they are on the surface. Like, Iowa State should win them. I've been the one publicly who's been saying Houston doesn't lose these games, and Arizona doesn't lose these games, and Duke doesn't lose these games, and that's right. Iowa State should not have lost this game, but when you do lose a game like this, you've got an opportunity to come back to Hilton Coliseum on Saturday against Kansas, against Houston on Monday, and that's the get-back. That's the get-back opportunity. This loss will mean nothing the second weekend of March, if you can get there. This loss will mean something if you let those weaknesses continue to get exposed and don't address them. And Iowa State is going to have to play desperate. They're going to have to play like their season's on the line at Hilton Coliseum on Saturday.
This is setting up very similar to when Iowa State went into Kansas the first time.
No doubt.
This is setting up where Iowa State is in need of a really big win. And what I guarantee, if Iowa State goes out and wins on Saturday, people are going to maybe not completely forget about this game, but they're not going to be thinking about it very often, especially when you have a Houston team coming in right after. But would it shock me if Iowa State went out and took it to Kansas on Saturday? No, it wouldn't. But there's not a game on the schedule the rest of the way that Iowa State can't win, but there's not a game they can't lose either. And you just can't let one loss spiral into two in a row.
Couldn't agree more, man. You look at Ken Pom, Iowa State's offensive rating takes a massive hit as anticipated, down to 17. The Cyclones are now 7th in the metrics. You pull up the conference-only offense, and it's the turnover percentage. Like, that's, if you look at a glaring issue for this team, they're 14th in a 16-team league at offensive turnover percentage. Turning the ball over 18% of possessions. That's got to fix, and 9 games or 10 games is a big sample size, but it's not the entire sample size. This team proved for a lot of non-conference play that they didn't turn the ball over. They've got to get back to what they were doing against Central Florida, against K-State, against Colorado. They've got to get back to that, or else this next stretch could be really difficult if you're giving the team 16 extra possessions.
The nice thing I like about it is you get 2 of your next 3 toughest games at home. You get 3 of your next 4 toughest games at home. But you have the Utah one in between there, so I'll say 3 of your next 5 are at home against 3 top 15 teams. So, if this isn't motivation to come to Hilton Coliseum on Saturday and Monday all revved up, because the Cyclones are going to need it. Kansas is coming off a huge win. We don't know the status of Darren Peterson, but I would assume he'll probably play. But Iowa State's going to need it. Hilton needs to be on fire on Saturday and Monday. And what better time on national television, ABC at noon on Saturday, to show how good Hilton Coliseum is?
Well, a lot to get better at ahead of Saturday's game. We're going to not make the After Dark guys stay up too late. This won't be a fun show, but they're gonna break it down and be honest and tell you the way it is, just like we hope to here in the Northwest Bank Studios. Thank you for tuning in. Even with all the negativity, all the positivity one week, that's what makes everyone fanatics, and we couldn't do it without you guys. Thanks for tuning in to Cyclone Fanatic Postgame.